This is the time of year of spring and summer is looming and barbecues and swimming pools and all sorts of positivity. So we take a break from that and we give you the 12 worst franchises in the National Football League. There was no formula here. There are no analytics involved. This is a qualitative gut feeling based upon present and past to the extent that it justified placement on the list. But we begin, and I should run through all 12 of the dirty dozen, since the radio audience can't see the graphic. Cardinals at number 1, which means they are number 32. We get the, Chris, you understand how that works? So if you're the top of the dirty dozen, that means you're the worst. So we go Cardinals at number 1. Let me just get your reaction on that before we continue down the list.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's where I would put them right now, too. I think that if I had to rank or power rank football teams, I'd put the Cardinals at the bottom of football right now. A lot of questions, coaches, players, roster wasn't that good last year, so I'm not going to disagree with you there.
And they're going to be underdogs in every game this year going into the season. It was a pick'em proposition before Patrick Peterson was suspended for 6 games. So they likely will be underdogs at home against the Detroit Lions when the season begins. And they will be underdogs in all their games as the season begins. Now, look, they could prove us wrong. But they need Kyler Murray to have a Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield type of an impact, or this team is going to be at 32 when the 2019 season ends. All right. Number 2 and number 3, a New York City monopoly. Jets 2, Giants 3. Could have gone Giants 2, Jets 3. But, with there's so much dysfunction with the Jets. And I actually think the Jets are going to be decent this year. But you can't ignore 50 years of futility. You can't ignore the chronic inability to get a franchise quarterback. And you can't ignore this inability by ownership to just understand how to manage a football team. You don't fire your GM 4 months after you fire your coach. Get rid of everybody at the same time, get a GM in there, let the GM hire the coach, get everybody on the same page, and move forward. And they're going to have a hard time getting everybody on the same page as they look for a GM now, because unless it's Adam Gase's hand-picked GM, the new GM is going to want his own coach sooner rather than later.
Well, yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not going to totally go ham on them for the way they handle the GM situation. I know in the perfect world, yeah, you'd like to start a new regime off with a new GM and a new head coach altogether, but it's not the worst thing in the world what they did and how they handled the Maccagnan situation. I actually probably am surprised by this more than any. I mean, you just said you think the Jets are going to be a pretty good football team. You talked about the franchise quarterback. Well, they got the franchise quarterback. So, to me, this is a little low for the New York Jets. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have put them below the Giants or the Dolphins or the Bengals for that matter. Those teams alone, I think, are in worse spots than the New York Jets are right now. So that was probably one of the shockers of your dirty dozen to me.
It just feels like the Jets are the personification of Murphy's Law, and everything that can go wrong does go wrong for the Jets. And every time it feels like they're beginning to break free from the muck, it just falls apart. That there's always something that happens to the Jets, and I'm factoring that in going forward. That as Jets fans, and I think seasoned Jets fans know not to get excited about what could happen this year, because every time you begin to allow yourself to get excited, if you're a Jets fan, that's when the bottom falls out. And I feel like what happened last week is just that reminder that the bottom can and will fall out for the New York Jets. What do you think about the Giants at 3?
Well, I mean, I can't disagree with you there. I would have think the Giants at 3, I would probably have them switched with the Dolphins. I would look at. I still think the Giants are in a better spot organizationally than the Miami Dolphins at this point. I know it hasn't been a great offseason and all that, but there is certain things to still like on the Giants roster. They do have Eli Manning, who's at least played there. I mean, got experience. We know he can play in some big games. It's not overly talented, but I guess it's a close call there between Giants and Dolphins, but I would give them the edge over the Dolphins as far as being a little bit better of a football team and a totality organization at this point right now.
Well, I mean, they have won Super Bowls in the last 45 years, which would give the Giants an edge over the Dolphins that way. And the thing about the Dolphins, I mean, it has been 20 years since Dan Marino. They have been careening around aimlessly at the quarterback position. They could have had Drew Brees. They took Dante Culpepper and his wrecked knee instead and gave the Vikings a second-round pick for Culpepper when Drew Brees was free and clear available in free agency. And it just feels like they can't find that quarterback. And I feel like if they could find that quarterback and develop that quarterback, they could become relevant again. I think that's one of the reasons why they hung on to Ryan Tannehill as long as they did, because they had themselves convinced they had finally found a new Dan Marino, and they were going to give him every chance possible to become Dan Marino. And once it finally became clear after 7 seasons it wasn't happening, they move on. But the Dolphins are another team. I feel like that, so many of these bad teams, it's just one move here, one move there, and some prudence by ownership. My biggest problem with the Dolphins is this. The owner doesn't live in South Florida. And I think if you really want to have an impact on a team, you need to be in the building every day. That's how you avoid dysfunction, because when the owner isn't there, then you have other people who set up their little fiefdoms, and you have these internal power struggles, and people lose sight of what the shared objective is. If the owner's there every day, that crap doesn't happen. And that's why I think that anybody, the Dolphins fans would be better off, frankly, if Stephen Ross either moved to Miami and showed up every day or sold the team to someone who would.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. I mean, ownership, having that leadership in the building on a daily basis, having everybody on edge, walking on eggshells a little bit, the accountability factor, it's needed as far as an NFL organization, and if you want it at its absolute best. I mean, you can look at the teams that are successful in the NFL, and I think more times than not, you're going to look at it and go, oh, ownership is very relevant in the building on a daily basis, and of course we can always start that conversation off with the New England Patriots and the Kraft family. If Robert Kraft isn't in the building looking over things, Jonathan Kraft is certainly there, but I just think if you look at the successful organizations, whether that's the Eagles and what they've done here recently, and the other teams that continue to kind of stay at the top on a yearly basis, it is good leadership, and the ownership is involved, and at least in the building, to keep everybody crossing their T's and dotting their I's on a daily basis.
Yeah. Even if you only spend 20% of your time on the football team, if you've got broader business interests like the Crafts do, like other owners do, you still you have to work somewhere, right? Show up there. Do your work there.
Yes.
The other people don't realize you're not working on the football team. You are there. You are present. There is a tangible value to being present. And that's one of the reasons why the Dolphins are present at number 4 on the list. I don't know. Maybe they should be higher than 4. All right, rest of the list. Bengals 5, Raiders 6, Washington 7, Bucks at 8. They would be much higher on that list if they didn't have Bruce Arians at head coach. Lions at 9, Broncos 10, 49ers 11, Browns 12. What's the biggest thing that stands out?
I guess the biggest thing that stands out to me, like the 49ers and Browns, I look at those as teams as being like borderline, certainly could have been off this list, right? Which
is why they're at 11 and 12.
I get you. I understand. I'm just framing it there. So to me, who are you nitpicking with there? Because I think right now, if I had to do the offseason and do my dirty dozen, I'd probably have the Tennessee Titans on there for at least a substitute for the Browns or the 49ers, one of those two teams. But I'm just interested to hear who you were kind of battling it out with for those teams that were outside the dirty dozen.
Well, I mean, for the Browns, look, here's the thing. A year ago, they would have been the clear number 1, and they wouldn't have been a number 2. Right?
Yeah.
Because they were 1-31 after 2 seasons. The fact that they would go from 1 to 12 in 1 year is amazing. And they still haven't done anything. I mean, I'm taking Freddie Kitchens' mantra to heart. We haven't won anything yet. That's right, you haven't. Now, there's a lot of reason to think that they will, and they've got great players. But Freddie Kitchens is unproven. He's got to prove that he can coach. And the thing that concerns me about the Browns, all due respect, which means here comes the insult, ownership meddles too much. Ownership causes too many problems with the Browns. And I think that this team, if it thrives, it's going to thrive in spite of ownership, not because of ownership. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're still on the list. They could break free from it easily this year, but they're the ones who can do it. And, all that pressure, all those expectations, I keep looking at the first 2 weeks. You mentioned the Titans. They have Tennessee and they have the Jets the first 2 weeks.
Right.
They come out of that 1-1 or 0-2. They come out at 0-2, and the sky's going to be falling in Cleveland. We'll see how they deal with that adversity. I believe in that guy, though, Baker Mayfield, that he's going to turn this team around, and they will be off this list next year if we remember to do it next year. And I think that as long as they just build it around him, don't let him overtake the team. That's the balance. You want to build it around him, but don't let him overtake the team and become a LeBron James type of a figure in Cleveland. You still want him to operate within the confines of a broader team.
Yeah, I think he'll do that. I think he's a team guy first anyways. I really would be shocked if the DNA of Baker Mayfield changes. I really think he has it, or whatever it is, the magic about him, the charismatic way about him to league and organization. And, hey, I'll say this. If I had a bet right now, I'm going to bet Cleveland makes it into the playoffs this year. I think they're that talented. I do have enough faith in Freddie Kitchens, their offensive line, their run game, what they do on the defensive side of the ball. I like Steve Wilkes is the D coordinator there. I think that's actually an upgrade. I mean, some of the moves they made in free agency, again, I do think ownership seems to be out of the way a little bit, to your point, what you're saying. Ever since John Dorsey has taken over, I feel like it's kind of been his thumbprint on everything, or fingerprint, I should say, on everything to this point as far as football is concerned, and I find that encouraging for the Browns too.
The team that I thought about putting on there, you mentioned the Titans. I actually flirted with the Texans. And the fact they've only been around 17 years helped them stay off of it because, it took them a long time to get to the playoffs. And it seems like when they get to the playoffs, they disappoint in dramatic fashion. They just don't show up for so many of these postseason games. They get that 4:30 p.m. Eastern slot on a Saturday afternoon, and they end up just looking awful. And it's like at some point you've got to do something more than that to be considered in the top half of the league. But they're in that
that's
going
to change with Deshaun
16
Watson.
and 20.
All those other years they had crap quarterbacks and not guys that were going to lead them in those big moments. So I would expect that to change.
They lost at home to the Colts last year in the postseason.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Which was a surprise. Yeah, but what I'm saying is they got Deshaun Watson. If he's going to get sacked 65 times a year, he's not going to be healthy enough to help turn the team around. All right, we got to take a break. When we return, Deshaun Watson could be the NFL MVP this year. Plenty of others could as well. We'll show you some of the FanDuel MVP odds, and we'll talk about which ones we like when PFT Live continues right after this.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.